The tray hit the floor before I even saw it coming. The sharp crack echoed through the cafeteria like a warning shot, and warm milk splashed across my boots. A wave of laughter rose around me, sudden, loud, and deliberate. It was the kind of laughter that wanted an audience. I didn't flinch. I just looked down at my boots, then raised my eyes to the girl standing across from me. Her arms were crossed, and a smug smile sat on her face, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name was Denna Ashworth. On my very first day at Meridian Station School, she had decided I was going to be her favorite target. "Oops," Denna said, her tone completely hollow. "Guess you should watch where you're standing around us." Around us, the cafeteria kept moving. Trays clattered, students talked, and no one stepped in. Nobody ever stepped in. That was the first lesson I learned on Meridian Station. People here loved to watch, but they hated to act. I bent down, picked up the tray, and set it back on the table. My hands were steady. My heartbeat didn't even spike. Deep inside my chest, an old voice, the voice that had kept me alive for 11 years, whispered its usual instruction: watch. Wait. Do not waste your strength on something that is not yet a real threat. A spilled tray was annoying, but it wasn't a threat. Not compared to what I had survived. My name is Kessa. 44 days ago, I arrived at Meridian Station as a transfer student from a settlement most people here have never heard of. They think I came from a poor mining colony. They think my silence means I'm slow, weak, or broken. They have no idea. Where I come from, silence doesn't mean weakness. Silence means you're alive. Silence means you made it through another storm, another night, another day where the ground itself wanted to kill you. On my old world, making the wrong sound at the wrong moment meant bringing something out of the dark that you wouldn't survive. Here. The worst thing that happened was a bratty girl knocking my lunch to the floor. I picked up my bag and walked away without saying a word. Behind me, I heard Denna whisper to her friends about how strange I was, how I didn't even act human. I let her words roll off me like rain. Words couldn't hurt me. I had learned that in a much harder place than this. The rest of the school day dragged on. Lessons about distant galactic history and planetary science felt completely useless. I sat near the back of every room, my eyes automatically scanning the doors, counting the exits, mapping out paths. Nobody here understood why I did that. Nobody here had ever needed to know the exits in case the building itself turned into a death trap. When the final bell rang, I thought I could head straight to my dorm. I was wrong. As I walked down the long corridor toward the transport bay, I heard fast footsteps closing in behind me. I shifted my weight naturally, turning my head just enough to catch their reflections in the polished wall panels. It was Marcus, one of Denna's friends, a tall boy with restless hands and an arrogant grin. Two other boys were with him, moving with the confidence of people who knew they had numbers on their side. "Hey!" Marcus called out. "New girl, wait up." I didn't wait up. I kept a steady, calm pace. Running would show fear, and I wasn't afraid of three boys who had never fought for a single breath in their lives. They caught up, forming a half-circle around me in an isolated stretch of the corridor near the transport bay, a spot where the security cameras didn't quite reach. They had picked it on purpose. "You embarrassed Denna today," Marcus sneered, stepping closer. "Picking up your tray like nothing happened, acting like you weren't even bothered." "I wasn't," I said simply. My answer irritated him. His jaw tightened, and one of his friends shifted his feet, a tiny movement that told me he was getting ready to do something aggressive. Instead of panicking, my pulse slowed down. My brain automatically logged the distances, the angles, and the balance of each boy's weight. It wasn't something I chose to do, it was hardwired into me after 11 years of survival. "You think you're better than us?" Marcus stepped into my space. "Some transfer kid from a nothing colony acting like nothing scares her." "Nothing here does," I replied softly. I wasn't trying to provoke him. It was just the truth. Marcus's face twisted in anger. His hand shot out, shoving hard toward my shoulder to knock me to the deck. For a fraction of a second, an ancient killer instinct flared in my chest. But I suppressed it. Instead of striking back, I simply took half a step to the side. His hand hit empty air. His own momentum pulled him forward, and he stumbled past me, crashing awkwardly against the metal wall with a loud grunt. Silence fell instantly over the three boys. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, completely composed, watching them. Marcus straightened up, clutching his arm, staring at me as if he were looking at a ghost. What? What was that? That, I said quietly, was you underestimating someone you know nothing about. I turned and walked away before any of them could react. My hands didn't start shaking until I was 3 corridors away, hidden out of sight. But it wasn't fear of Marcus, it was the sudden, sharp memory of another hand reaching for me in the dark on a world light years away, where dodging half a second late meant dying. I pressed my palm against the cool steel wall of the corridor, breathing slowly until the memory faded back into its locked box. Meridian Station is safe, I reminded myself. The walls here didn't crack during atmospheric storms. The air wasn't laced with toxic gas. Nothing waited in the dark with razor-sharp claws. Yet here I was, flinching at ghosts. I made it back to my small dormitory room, a basic space with a narrow bed, a desk, and a window looking out into the vast, dark vacuum of space. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the stars, wondering if any of them belonged to the sky over Quran 9. Quran 9 was the name of my home world. I hadn't spoken that name aloud to anyone here. Not to my teachers, not to the station counselor, and not even to Priya, the quiet girl in my afternoon classes who sometimes sat near me without asking annoying questions. Quran 9 wasn't a place you could explain to people who had never feared for their lives. It was a death world, a planet built to test whether you deserved to keep breathing. At 6 years old, I had learned to recognize the sharp, metallic smell of an acid storm, giving us 90 seconds to find underground shelter before the sky dissolved skin from bone. At 7, my mother put a blade in my hand, not to make me a fighter, but to give me a chance to survive. And at 9, I lost my brother, Tuvin. I tried not to think about Tuvin. Opening that door always cost me too much. But sitting in the quiet room, the memory broke free anyway. Tuvin had been 7 years old, small and quick to laugh. We had strayed past the safe perimeter to gather emergency routes when a pack of grass beasts found us. They were pack predators that moved low and fast through the red stone. I remembered running, screaming at him to keep up, and then hearing him trip. I remembered turning back for him instead of running to safety. That single decision changed our lives forever, though only one of us made it back to the settlement. A soft knock on my door pulled me sharply back to the present. Instinctively, my body dropped into a low, defensive stance before my mind caught up. Knocks here didn't mean danger. Kessa, a voice called. It was Priya. I opened the door. She stood there holding a stack of study tablets, looking uncertain. I heard what happened with Marcus by the transport bay, she said softly. Is it true you just stepped aside and let him fall? Something like that, I said. Priya looked at me closely. You're not like anyone else here. I don't mean that as an insult. I just don't think anyone here really understands what you've been through. They don't, I agreed softly. She held out a tablet. I brought notes from today's class. And I thought maybe you didn't want to sit alone tonight. On Quran 9, an act of unearned kindness could be a trap or a sign of weakness. Here, it cost Priya nothing except the risk of being seen with the weird transfer girl. I took the tablet. Thank you, I said, allowing myself a small, rare smile. Priya smiled back. But as she left, the old survival voice in my head whispered its eternal warning, do not get comfortable. Comfort is when the real threat finds you. That warning proved true sooner than I expected. At exactly 3 a.m., a shrill, pulsing alarm tore through the quiet dorms. I hit the floor before my eyes were fully open, crouching low, eyes sweeping the dark room for threats. It took 5 seconds for my brain to process where I was. Flashing red lights lined the ceiling, and an automated voice repeated, "This is a scheduled maintenance drill. Please remain in your quarters." A drill. Just a drill. My heartbeat slowly returned to normal, but sleep was impossible. I sat by the window until morning. This was the third drill in 45 days. Each one happened at a strange hour, lasting only a few minutes before canceling out. Everyone else thought it was routine station maintenance, but to me, the pattern felt wrong. On Quran 9, shifting patterns were the only warning you got before a disaster hit. At lunch the next day, I sat with Priya near the far wall of the cafeteria. She was talking about her father, who worked in station engineering. "My dad's been working late for weeks," she mentioned offhandedly, picking at her food. "He said there are structural readings in the lower levels that don't make sense. Some kind of anomaly." My attention locked onto her words. "Which lower levels?" "Near the old docking bay," Priya shrugged. "That part of the station is ancient." "Why?" "No reason," I said softly, filing the piece of information away. 2 days later, an announcement broadcast across the school. The annual engineering showcase would take place at the end of the week, located directly in the lower observation deck near the old docking bay. The moment I heard the location, a cold feeling settled in my gut. My instincts were screaming. Something was wrong down there, and I wasn't going to wait around to find out what it was the hard way. That night, well past curfew, I slipped out of my dorm. I had already mapped the security patrol routes during my first week on the station, so avoiding the guards was simple. The lower levels felt completely different from the bright, polished corridors above. The lighting was a dim, flickering yellow, and the air carried a sharp, metallic tang that reminded me uncomfortably of the ozone smell before an acid storm. The walls were old, patched with mismatched metal plates. I moved silently, my feet barely touching the deck plates. Near the edge of the old docking bay, I found what I was looking for, a heavy maintenance hatch standing slightly ajar. Faded warning labels covered the frame, indicating restricted access. I crouched near the opening. The dust on the floor showed fresh footprints, along with a thin, dark trail of liquid residue leading deeper into the passage. I dipped my gloved finger near it. It wasn't machine oil or coolant. It looked almost organic, dark, thick, and faintly reflective under the dim light. From deep inside the passage came a low, mechanical hum, followed by a faint, wet hiss that made every hair on my arm stand up. I pressed myself flat against the shadow of the wall, slowing my breathing to a silent crawl. Heavy, hesitant footsteps approached from the hatch. A man emerged, an older maintenance engineer with graying hair and tired eyes. His hands were trembling as he pulled the hatch shut and secured a mechanical lock over it. I recognized the expression on his face instantly. It was the look of someone carrying a terrifying secret they couldn't share. He hurried away into the dark corridor without noticing me. Once he was gone, I stepped up to the hatch. The lock he had installed was brand new, designed to keep people out. Whatever was behind this door, the station staff was hiding it. I didn't try to pick the lock that night. Rushing into the unknown without preparation was how people died on Quran 9. Instead, I carefully memorized the exact layout, counted the turns back to the main lift, and slipped back to my room before the next security sweep. The next morning, I found Priya during study period. "Has your dad mentioned anything else about the lower levels?" I asked casually. "About the old docking bay?" Priya frowned. "Actually, he barely talked at all last night. He looked terrified. Usually, he complains about budget cuts, but now he's just quiet. Silence where there used to be noise." fear hidden behind a sealed hatch. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture I didn't like. "Priya," I said carefully, "is the engineering showcase definitely still happening down there?" "Yeah, in 2 days. The whole senior class and the station board will be there." "Why?" "Just curious," I lied. I made my decision. 2 nights before the showcase, I was going back down. And this time, I was going through that hatch. I prepared the way I had been taught on my home world. I grabbed a small flash torch from a maintenance closet, checked the battery power twice, and secured a basic multi-tool in my pocket. At midnight, I moved like a shadow through the quiet station, descending into the yellow-lit corridors of the old docking bay. The lock on the hatch was simple, a standard mechanical bypass. Back home, survival meant breaking into sealed supply pods before a storm hit, so bypassing this lock took less than 3 minutes. The hatch swung open with a soft metallic groan. Beyond it, a steep flight of metal stairs descended into pitch darkness. The air rising from below was warm, heavy, and smelled strongly of organic decay, a smell my Deathworld instincts recognized immediately. It was the scent of deep caves, the places on Quran 9 we were warned never to enter. I clicked on my torch and descended into the dark. The stairs led into a massive, forgotten maintenance vault. Old, rusted machinery was piled against the walls, covered in thick dust. But in the center of the room, a large, modern containment unit sat bolted to the floor, humming with power. Bright yellow biohazard labels covered its casing. But what caught my eye was a long, jagged crack running down its side. Dark, thick residue was slowly oozing from the fissure, pooling on the metal deck.